Now, the other guy that people have brought up is Sam Bennett. I will note that last week I brought up the name John Tavares, and I don't think that Tavares is going to be like a realistic target for the Flyers. I don't think that you're going to see the Flyers be able to woo him out of Toronto. The only way that a John Tavares hits free agency, the only way that he leaves Toronto is if they tell him in no uncertain terms they don't want him back. And I don't see that happening. I think that would be a disaster class for Toronto. And I think that when you have a guy whose dream was always to play for his hometown team and has been producing for you, if Toronto lets both Marner and Tavares leave, I don't know where that leaves them as a team. So I would expect that Tavares is going to be back. Now, there were some people who were like kind of douchey about this, but like when I threw out the idea last week, there was people who were like, well,
John Tavares, why do we want to bring a 35-year-old center in the midst of a rebuild? Why would we do that? Why would the Flyers decide that's a good idea, Russ? Why would they decide that, Russ? Why would the Flyers get in the John Tavares business, Russ?
And I was like, well, it's kind of simple, right? You need to have a good center to play with Matvei Michkov. It's not about finding a guy that's going to be able to play with Michkov for the next 10 years because that guy I thought was Wyatt Johnston, and he re-upped with Dallas. They could potentially try to make a move, but keep in mind, young centers that are on the come-up, they don't usually hit unrestricted free agency. And if you're going to go out and get them in a trade, it's going to cost you a lot. So why do I say John Tavares? Because Tavares this year had 74 points in 75 games and put up 38 goals and 36 assists. And so, like, if I'm the Flyers, right? Let's just say, hypothetically, they're able to clear the money, they're able to move the money. You can lock into Mitch Marner for 7 years at a $13 million AAV. And you're hoping that he's going to be that 100-point per game player, or very close to it. Sorry, not per game. That 100-point player over the course of a season. Do I, if I'm the Flyers, and I'm looking at this, see, like the computer already knew where I was going. Do I want to invest that kind of money at that kind of term for Mitch Marner? Or do I say, you know what? There's a really good chance that John Tavares could have a legitimately good impact on Matvei Michkov. And do I consider saying, all right, if he would take, let's say, $7 million to stay in Toronto. And let me take a gander really quick at what his current deal is, because I honestly don't know what his AAV is right now. But like, let's say Tavares we're going to consider taking $7 million to stay in Toronto, and that's totally based on the idea that Toronto is going to want to keep him and that everybody's happy and everything's hunky-dory. Let's see. Can I find? Oh, they already moved it up a year. I can't find his salary. I'll have to look for it. I don't know what Tavares' salary is right now. That's my fault, guys. I'm sorry. I've let the whole team down. I'll see if I can find it while talking. But if he's going to take $7 million to stay in Toronto, or consider staying in Toronto for $7 million, don't you then, if you're the Flyers, say, we'll give you $9.5 million for like 2 years? There we go. Amadeo. $11 million. He's not going to get $11 million on another deal at age 35. Like, there's practically, or he's 34. At 34 years of age, he's not getting $11 million. So if on the open market, it would say like he's going to get around 9, even with the cap going up, the law of diminishing returns, like I don't think he'll get 11. If he would take 7, maybe 8 to stay in Toronto, if you're the Flyers, you say, yo, we'll give you 2 years or 3 years at $10 million. I think that's a better investment for the Flyers. If they came out gangbusters this offseason and said our number one priority is to get a legitimate star center, even though his best years are probably somewhat behind him, a guy who could still be around a point per game center in this league, and a guy who's been around 80 points for 3 out of the last 4 years, I think that guy's more valuable. Now, again, Marner getting like 13 and a half over 7 years versus Tavares getting $10 million over 2 or 3 years. I think that's the smarter business for the Flyers. It doesn't mean that it would work. It also doesn't mean that if you're Tavares that you'd have any interest in it. But if you're looking at a team that you could help build back into being a playoff contender, and that, oh, by the way, next year might be much more involved in free agency, plays in a very good market, and presumably plays for a coach that guys like Quinn Hughes have had glowing reviews about in Rick Tocchet, do you consider it?